In Money Watch news today, it was a relatively flat day for the U.S. stock market. The Dow Jones rose only about 25 points.
It was also a flat day for the NASDAQ and S&P, both closed virtually unchanged. Javier David and Kristin Myers join us now. Javier is a CBS News contributor and the managing editor for business and markets for Axios. Kristin is the editor-in-chief and senior vice president of ETF.com. Good to have both of you with us. The very first Closing Bell Friday of 2024. Kristin, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah.
We got to talk about those Labor Department numbers because the job market's so hot, robust numbers, and really a strong close for 2023. What does this say as we put that year into the books?
Yeah, so we had actually seen as a part of this latest jobs report that the Labor Department actually revised the previous month's numbers down, which actually made, I think, this increase even more stark. 216,000 jobs that were added back in December. Of course, that's compared to 175,000 that economists had been essentially anticipating. They were expecting unemployment to tick upward to 3.8%. It remained unchanged at 3.7%. So these are really, really strong numbers. And this is why we're seeing the markets essentially, I wouldn't say have a temper tantrum, but not really be too happy with some of those numbers, because the Federal Reserve has really been using the labor market as a proxy for the strength of the U.S. economy. And as long as the U.S. economy continues to chug along at such a strong pace, it really shows that essentially those rate cuts that investors had essentially been expecting this year probably not going to happen as soon as they think they're going to happen. And we're definitely not going to get as many as they've been hoping that they would be getting.
And so, Javier, with all that in mind, how are things looking here, for the rest of 2024? Will the labor market's resilience continue?
I think it's a resounding yes. So they're dovetailing off what Kristin just said. There were two items in my mind that tucked into the December jobs report that suggest that workers still pretty much have the upper hand. A, wages are still on the rise. B, the labor participation rate actually fell a little bit, meaning that there are less available workers in the market than there were before. Taken together with an unemployment rate that's still below 4%, the market's still running slightly hotter than the Fed would like. And that is, A, completely inconsistent with anything that suggests a downturn. But at this point, the central bank expects to cut rates sometime this year. It's a matter of when. But data like this doesn't really help the case very much, especially when it's putting more money in the pockets of consumers that already arguably are spending more than they should.
And Javier, let's also talk about inflation. The December Consumer Price Index report comes out next week. Will prices keep coming down?
More than likely, but a thing I think that's a tailwind is the holiday shopping season. It was surprisingly brisk. People went out there and they spent. So some of that might be reflected in CPI data. People are really spending more money. That means companies feel more comfortable charging more for goods and services. Slowly but surely, they're slowing down on passing those higher costs along with consumers. But one thing that really should be reflected in the CPI data next week is a drop in energy prices, most notably gas. That's a pretty strong tailwind, and it's helping to keep inflation contained. And the real wild card here, I think, which isn't going to be reflected in next month's data, but we might see in the following months, is the tension in the Red Sea. That's creating some real tension in supply chains. And that if it's left unchecked, it can sort of block the flow of goods and put upward pressure on prices all over again.
Absolutely. I want to bring Kristin in for her take on this. Energy prices down, as Javier was saying, still, even though inflation's coming down, consumer prices, when you take out energy prices, still high. So what can people expect as we're looking into the month ahead?
Right. So it is forecasted that we're going to see a slight tick upward when at least it comes to that inflation report. However, at least when you look at the broad trend, we have definitely seen inflation cooling. However, at a sort of annualized rate, we're still running about twice what the Federal Reserve wants. They have a targeted inflation rate of 2%. It's going to be around 4%, which is not where they want. Now, however, the Fed has essentially said that they really feel like they've gotten inflation under control, but there has always been some sort of sticking points in that CPI report. So Javier just mentioned oil, or rather energy costs. We also want to see housing and services. We want to start to see those tick downward, because those have been some really big sticking points inside of that inflation report. And if we continue to see people pay a lot more money for rent, or pay a lot more money when they go out and try to get those services, that's again putting wages in people's pockets. We're really going to start seeing the Fed saying, okay, you wanted those rate cuts. you're not going to be getting them just yet. And so this is why this jobs report and next week's CPI report is going to be so hotly watched by a lot of investors.
All right, my favorite part, we switched to a little bit of pop culture, economics. Javier, there's something strange happening in Target stores. People are really trying to get their hands on, of all things, cups.
Who knew? Who
Cups.
knew? Right.
All right, they are called Stanley Cups, but they shouldn't be confused with the NHL trophy. What is going on?
It's the collision of a few things that Americans love. The first is nostalgia, the other is collectibles, and then the last is a good old-fashioned viral social media trend. So these cups have been around for 100 years. The Washington Post pointed out it's like a cult-like popularity that's been amped by social media. These viral times that we live in, all it takes is a well-placed TikTok, Twitter video. It's off to the races. It creates this domino effect. People just want them more and more.
I mean, that's crazy. Like those shelves are being picked clean.
It's crazy.
They must be rubbing their hands together at Stanley, just like all this free media that they're getting. And these things are literally flying off the shelves.
And they had a two cup per person limit.
Oh.
And
that
so like
people
a
were
field
fighting
and
over.
locusts just
just absolutely grabbing for them.
If one were to think about investing in Stanley, Kristin, I mean, what do you think?
I mean, well, you can't. But I mean, listen, I don't know if we can look at the Stanley Cup as really like an alternative asset class, right? Because listen, they're super expensive. I just want to highlight. If you
but
think
they
that
do
they're
last
cheap,
a long time. That's what they're sort of known for,
yeah,
right?
they survived a car fire. That's really, I would say, one of the things that kind of kicked off this virality. A woman's car essentially burned, completely destroyed,
People
and her
waiting outside
Stanley
in that
Cup
video, by the way.
survived with cold water and ice still inside. And that's part of the reason why why so many people essentially love them. I don't get the craze. I don't have a Stanley Cup personally, although watching these videos makes me think, maybe I should get one. I don't know. I don't drink water.
You're missing out.
I don't drink water out of cups like that. I don't know if Javier has one. But I mean, listen, as Javier was mentioning, virality, a trend, that's obviously fueling some of this. And then you add in those influencers, micro-influencers and TikTok, recipe for huge revenue gains for Stanley.
Yeah, I want to see like the analysis on social media as how things move and then what that translates to the stores, right? And how quickly then the companies respond. I mean, I just feel like it's fascinating to see how these things ignite. Who knows why? Who gets it? Thanks for helping us try to figure it out. Javier David and Kristin Myers, great to see you both. Thank you.